Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. I'm super stoked to be here in Washington, D.C. at the ESA conference this year, but I'm with my friend here, Christian, so we're just going to talk bugs for a little bit and what he's been working on. So welcome to the show, Christian. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name is Christian Cabuslay, and I'm very happy to be here.
Nice. Okay, so we'll get into a little bit of what you've been doing recently in a minute, but let's go back to your schooling. Where did you go to school, and where are you in that path so far?
Yeah, so let's see. Right now, I'm at Drexel University as a PhD candidate. I did my undergraduate work at University of California, Berkeley.
Nice.
And yeah, that's kind of...
Alrighty. So what were some of the things you worked on throughout your schooling so far?
Yeah, so I guess my research experience started at Berkeley as a second year. Joined the lab of Dr. Neil Sutsui, who does some really cool work studying social insects and their communication.
Yeah.
So I got a chance to be an undergraduate kind of assistant for a graduate student there, who really opened my eyes up to entomology as a potential career path for me.
Nice. Okay, so what have you been studying so far? Like, what are some of the projects you've worked on?
So when I was at Berkeley, I was studying an invasive fire ant in Indonesia.
Okay.
That was kind of acting as a helper for invasive plants to spread also through Indonesia. These
interesting.
Ants ate seeds and buried a lot of seeds, and were being invasive ants. Were also showing a preference for some invasive seeds.
So the ants were invasive to Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
And so were the plants that they were helping.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But were the plants and the fire ants from the same location? Like, where are they both from?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. They got introduced independently from each other. And
Okay.
Ants.
Yeah. Interesting. So what are some of the things that you have been finding with that? Like, do we have any solutions to this? Or, what have you been finding with your research?
Yeah, so that was work I did as an undergrad with a PhD student. I think it's just trying to understand how that was affecting the grasses that I believe it was the locals growing like livestock on those grasses, and how that was going to be impacting how invasive species spread was impacting kind of a whole bunch of different this whole ecosystem essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about your recent stuff? What have you been working on right now?
So right now I'm working on the genome evolution of bacteria that hang out in the guts of ants and help them digest things that they otherwise wouldn't be able to digest.
Wow. Okay. So, so tell us a little bit more about that. What have you been finding with that, and why is this important research to do?
Yeah. So these ants are the ants that I study are called turtle ants.
Mm-hmm.
They are relatively low on the food chain. They eat a lot of nitrogen waste. So mammal urine, for example, is something that we see them eating a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their main source of nitrogen, which is really important in proteins.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bacteria in their guts, there's a whole bunch of different types of bacteria that hang out in these turtle ant guts, and they all seem to work together to take this waste nitrogen, this mammal urine, and convert it into essential amino acids for the ants that they need to survive and wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
Wow. And so you're studying how the gut bacteria is able to break down those materials? Or is that...
There's some of that in our lab, as well as a lot of what I'm working on is how these bacteria have been evolving over 50 million years of interacting together in this ant gut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ants have multiple stomachs, right? And so, like, which... Is this bacteria transferable through their social stomach, or is this I don't remember what the word is, individual stomach, of the ants? How does that work?
Yeah, so the really interesting way that these ants are able to pass down all these different gut bacteria to other ants in their colony is through a kind of funky process called oral anal trophallaxis. Essentially, an ant that doesn't have the bacteria emerges from a pupa, and there's not really a nice way to say this, feeds on the rectal fluids from a mature ant.
Yeah.
And that's how a new ant gets her full set of bacteria for her gut.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So, how do you study this bacteria? Like, do you have to dissect the ant and extract it, and then how do you study this, like under a microscope, or how does that all work?
All of the above. Yeah, the dissections are a pain because these are very small ants, the ones that we study at least.
Yeah.
But we do a lot of trying to culture these bacteria onto bacteria growing media. And we do a lot of genome sequencing and metagenome sequencing to get a sense of what the genomes of these bacteria look like, what kinds of genes do they encode, and how these can relate to their capacity to help these ants with their kind of nutritionally lacking diets. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, are we finding that these two organisms evolved over time together, or like when did they converge? Converge is the word, right? I think. I don't know.
When they started working together?
Yeah.
Sure. We found that, so in the gut of these ants, there's something more than 15 different types of bacteria.
Wow.
In their guts. And it seems like at least some of them have been evolving alongside these ants for the past 50 million years or so. And some of them seem to be a little bit less directly dependent on the ants to be transmitted or to be evolving. So it varies depending on specifically which type of bacteria you look at. Some of them seem to be way more co-evolved, I suppose, with the ants.
Yeah. Wow, that is so fascinating. So let's move on to a little bit more about you. When did you originally get interested in entomology, and what kind of drew you into that?
Yeah, for me, it happened in kind of two parts. When I was in elementary school, my school had a yearly science fair. And 2 separate years, I did something that was related to entomology. One year, I put a whole bunch of petri dishes with random food out in the garage and saw how many ants collected at different
That's awesome.
petri dishes. They loved fig Newtons and sliced ham.
Nice. So your own little experiments.
Exactly.
That's so awesome.
And then another year, I did some work, this kind of classic experiment. Gosh, I should have remembered who originally did the experiment, kind of disproving spontaneous generation of life by putting out a piece of steak and showing that maggots. So the original thought back in the day, this is hundreds of years ago, was that maggots spontaneously generated from rotting meat.
Yeah.
And so I kind of recreated an experiment where you put rotting meat outside, and if you put the meat in a plastic bag or keep flies from accessing it, obviously maggots will not generate on that rotting steak. So yeah, my parents had me put a lot of rotting food outside, I guess.
Nice. Nice.
So that's where those two kind of experiments are where it started, and then it wasn't until I was in undergrad where I joined that ant research lab that I realized that there was something that I could actually do with insects for a career.
As a career.
And the people in that lab were some of my favorite people that I've ever met, and kind of opened that door that I didn't even know existed for me. But
Yeah, that is so interesting. So within your life and the world of entomology and science and just your life in general, who do you kind of look up to as kind of your inspiration or maybe a mentor or something like that?
I've been lucky to have a series of people that have helped me get to where I am.
Yeah.
It was my dad early on kind of helping me with these science projects. my high school AP Bio teacher, Miss Ward. And then the graduate student that took me in in the Tsutsui lab, her name was Rebecca Sandage. Was like, my first entry point into knowing that this was something I could do. The people here are really cool. Entomology is awesome. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. So apart from entomology, or maybe related to it, what are some hobbies or activities you enjoy outside of entomology in your spare time?
Yeah. I love spending a lot of time outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not every time I'm outside am I flipping over rocks and seeing what's underneath, but that's part of it sometimes. And been watching a lot of movies.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so what are your favorite genres or kinds of movies?
Recently, really sad and dramatic romances for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that is so cool. So what are your big plans for the future, with research or maybe some fun trips you want to go on? What are your big goals for the future?
Yeah, I've got a few big things coming up in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a 6-year PhD student, so I'm looking for postdocs right now.
Nice.
With the goal of running my own research lab at a university. In a couple months, I will be a father.
Nice. Congratulations.
So I'm really looking forward to introducing her to the world of entomology.
Nice.
I love what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trying to make the world a little bit more friendly to the creepy crawlies out there.
Yeah, that is really awesome. Well, I'm so excited for you. That'll be so awesome. So lastly, before we wrap this up, where can the viewers go to learn more about you? Do you maybe have social media that you'd be willing to share, or a website for the labs you've worked in or something? If you don't have social media, that's totally fine. But where can we go to learn more?
Yeah, I don't have social media. I've managed to stay off that for
Nice.
I'm working on a website as I start to accelerate my search for postdocs and getting my name out there. But otherwise, working on a paper coming out soon that you can find some of my work at.
Nice.
Otherwise, not a lot of ways to read about me just yet, but I'm working on it.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, so more to come for that. But thank you so much for being on the show, Christian. This was really fun. Really great talk. It was really great to get to know you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. If you enjoyed it, definitely consider dropping a follow on whatever platform you're listening on. And also, Lil Dudes Insect Academy is a non-profit organization. So if you're passionate about science communication, entomology, outreach, and education, and you enjoy what we're doing and how we're solving that gap, then consider heading over to our website and donating there, or becoming a monthly donor via our Patreon, which is also linked in the show notes of this episode. Yeah, so share this episode with one of your friends, and tune in next week. I will see you all next week, and with that, keep on bugging.